I grew up doing theater, and I did theater in high school and in college, and a little bit after college. And I just am greedy. I like to not have to stop. I think I like getting. It was such a blessing that we were able to get to live in it for that long. And I think when you do get to get into it for that long, you get lost. And that's where the magic is, and why I think people love doing theater, because you can disappear into the world of the play and the world of the person that you're playing. And there's something so magical, and it's kind of difficult to describe or explain because it's magical.
It's magical.
So let's just start at the top. Tell me about when you both first received the script. This episode was written by Ian Brennan and directed by Michael Oppendahl.
I got the script the day I found out that I got the job, which was June 13th, 2023. Yes, I know the date. And I read it that day, and yeah, I was floored and really terrified and excited and moved, and also just felt so blessed, and I knew it was going to be so special. And yeah.
I auditioned for this the day before the actor strike, and had only received, I'd gotten 2 scenes from episode 3, and that was sort of all I knew, and then the strike. And then I got the offer for the show the day the strike ended, which was like, an unbelievable actor miracle beyond miracles. And I think they sent me the first 3 scripts first, and then a few weeks later sent 4 and 5. So I read 4 and 5 together, and I put them down and was sort of like shaking for 48 hours, and was like, I kind of couldn't look at them and felt nauseous and was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And put it down for a really long time, and knew how special it was. And I just felt intimidated by the weight of it, the responsibility of it. And also was like, I don't know who Leslie is yet. And I was still so afraid of how I was going to work playing her that I basically avoided it for several months later until we knew when we were going to shoot it. And I felt like, we'll get into that later, but then picked it up later.
I'm actually curious, was anyone here, was this your first time seeing the series at all, or have you seen all of it? Oh, yeah, quite a few. So this was your first introduction to the series. That's very exciting.
Thank you guys also for just being here tonight. It means a lot. Thank you.
So speaking of the strike, Cooper, you mentioned backstage some of your process during that time, since you weren't able to get on set and start filming, the way that you prepped with the script. Do you want to tell everyone?
Yeah. In the beginning, I was remembering, I haven't talked about this, that the first thing that I did really with the script was just, I wrote it almost every day. I was just...
So like the action as well, like every word? Or
No, just my words. No punctuation or anything. It would just be the words, and so I just wrote it a lot, and I would try to think it before I was going to bed if I wasn't listening to testimony. But yeah, I think that's really how I started, just kind of getting it all in my brain. And there's something also about like writing your words over and over and over again and not saying them, because then when you go to say them, it comes out more organically or truthfully. Yeah.
I'm curious about the no punctuation thing too, because it does feel a lot like sort of a stream of consciousness, and that changes it from the original a little bit too, like those pauses and such.
Yeah, totally. I think we don't necessarily speak with punctuation. You're not thinking like, I'm gonna do an exclamation point right now, but yeah. So I think.
But they also, the script, it's one of the most extraordinary pieces of writing. Ian Brennan wrote the script, and obviously, and him and Ryan Murphy and all of the writers, what they created, and the specificity not only of what they were writing, but I think how they captured voice in their writing was so amazing, and rhythm like that. We stayed almost entirely on book when we shot it. There were a couple of things that we wanted to slightly change that we talked to them about, and they were wonderful about that. And I think I had one ad lib, which was just when I tell him to look at me. But everything else was written exactly as it was. And so that, there was...
all the little things were written.
Just so hard to write. I mean, that is,
I remember reading it too, and I guess after watching so much testimony, it really sounded like him. It really, really, reading it, I was like, wow, they got him. And that also made it easier when you went to go and do it, because it just felt like him, and I knew him so well at that point that it just, yeah.
I want to follow up on that too, because I know you studied a lot of his body language and kind of making him come across, as sometimes just sort of this like large child a little bit. That's something that you and Nicholas have both talked about.
Yeah. I really wanted the audience to empathize with him. I wanted them to believe that he was telling the truth about what happened to him, because that's just what I believe, and that was my point of view, and I wanted that to be a through line. And so in order to make that be so believable, I wanted those I wanted the mannerisms and the body language and the way that he speaks to show that had happened to him, because your body becomes, body keeps the score. Has anyone read that? Your body remembers what's happened to you, and you start behaving in that way and speaking in a way, and your shoulders are down and your jaw is tight and you stutter, or you can't get your words out, or you sigh. So I wanted all of those things to further support his truth. Yeah.
I feel like those people who this was their first episode today, when you go back and watch the series from the beginning, I think you'll have a very different experience just because of that, because it's there from the beginning.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And then Ari, tell me a bit more about your process. We talked about you've journaled. You can tell everyone about that.
I feel like I can see you and you.
We're also.
Is that too far? Okay.
It's too far.
Is that too far? Okay.
Come in.
I just feel like
I feel like I'm interviewing for a job or being interviewed. So. Yes, Ari, your process.
Oh yes, my process. There were a lot of different levels of process with, with Leslie in general, which there was all of the research of reading and watching and listening and sleeping. We both slept with testimony, or Leslie wrote a book and she did the audio book, and that was so helpful. And there was sort of wanting to get at her essence and all of the actor work and the scene work, and then there was also a lot of personal work and writing of working through my own fear and self-doubt about stepping into her shoes, which I had a lot of fear about. And I do this creative dream work as well with a really incredible teacher named Kim Gillingham. It's really about tapping into your unconscious and the well of creativity in there. And she was doing a one-day workshop in LA that I used episode 5 sort of as a dream and walk through, which was so interesting to feel all of these sort of, you're moving around in weird shapes in the dark, kind of traveling.
Acting school.
Traveling through your unconscious and swimming through and seeing different dynamics. And I think, Leslie self-defined herself as an angry fighting type. And there was a lot of backstory about her own family, and she was born in Queens in the 40s, and her first memory, we're seeing pictures of the Holocaust, and her grandmother was a union organizer, and there was always the sense of outrage and fairness, and And I'm much more of a, like, you know, Cooper laughs, but you know, I'm not like that. Let's just say I'm more of a turn on myself, you know, kind of person. And so I think trying to own my anger was a big thing that came up, and especially in episode 5, that there's a part of reading it where part of why I put it down was I was just like, how am I not going to cry through this and just want to comfort him in a me kind of way. And she taught me, you know, playing her was an enormous gift in embodying a different kind of ferocity and an anger and a strength that I found to be incredibly loving and incredibly nurturing and caring, maybe even more so in a way than some of my automatic responses is. Like, I felt like how she was holding space was so incredible, but I had to really know her to know how she listened. So it was a long journey, and all that work kept going through kind of till the end of shooting. Still processing.
I'm curious from a technique perspective, you know, that anger is so palpable, I think, in the episode, in, you know, when she's talking about the parents and stuff, and, you know, you're like, that's not what a mother is. How did you, you know, it's all vocal work at that point. What specific things did you maybe try to do to bring that across?
There wasn't a particular specific exercise or work. I mean, I had worked a lot on my own to try to find her voice and her rhythm and where that came from. And when I was a kid, I did an all-female production of King Lear with Kristen Linklater, who's a voice teacher at the Linklater method. And so, like, there's some of that lives in me, and consciousness about sort of where the voice is coming from. But I think at that point, at first, when I was playing around with her voice, it felt like I felt so self-conscious. And at the very beginning, I would like work for a day and then had like 3 weeks off and then work again. And I would start talking like her and be like, oh my God, do I sound totally ridiculous or outrageous or what am I doing? And then by the time we got to episode 5, it was, her voice was with me. And so then it was just really being with you.
And then you swam around in it too. Like there are a couple moments where there's this sweetness that you bring to Leslie, and even in some of the darkest moments of that episode, like I think Erik is talking about the rough sex, and he's like, and the rough sex was, you know, and you're like, what, you know, and just like he's asking you like what flavor of ice cream he likes the best, you know. And I know that kind of sounds strange, but the way that you were so grounded and there to hold the space for him and not making it about yourself and not taking it in like that was so beautiful, and also I think allowed Erik to have it allowed him to be able to be vulnerable like that. So
I think also in reading her book too, I was reminded for 30 years or however long she'd been a lawyer at that point, she had heard about the worst of humanity over and over again, you know. And so in her book or in some interviews, she's like, when you're dead, you're dead. You know, like there's a matter of factness that she sort of had about things. It was also about building up a tolerance for that, so that a different kind of care, but that is also factual. But also, I mean, I think a huge thing that we talked about with Michael and Ryan and Ian and everyone was that episode 5 was the moment where Leslie became Erik's mother, basically. And so I think a lot of that really informed where we were sort of headed in the feeling underneath of it.
Oh, absolutely. And then in case you couldn't tell, both of these actors have theater experience on stage. So tell me about bringing that, you know, into this. Obviously, it's still a set with a camera, but, you know, essentially performing this like very intense short play.
I grew up doing theater, and I did theater in high school and in college and a little bit after college. And I just am greedy. I like to not have to stop. I think I like getting, it was such a blessing that we were able to get to live in it for that long. And I think when you do get to get into it for that long, you get lost. And that's where the magic is, and why I think people love doing theater, because you can disappear into the world of the play and the world of the person that you're playing. And there's something so magical, and it's kind of difficult to describe or explain because it's magical.
It's magical. Yeah, but and also I think the things, just on a really technical side of it, but where you're able to overlap and there's pause and there's ability to live in something, right? So, and and that it's sometimes, and I understand, of course, why people have to do it in edits of shows. You got to get through time. You got to do the thing. But sometimes it's like, I feel like life gets edited out. Like, I know the plot's there, but I also love human behavior, and sometimes you miss the bits. It's in the air that exists.
Those bits of business.
Bits of business. Oh, bits of business.
Walk me through this set. What does it look like? I think we know where the camera is placed, but like, where are the monitors? How many people are there? Was it a big set or was it kind of claustrophobic?
It's so that same interview room is used a bunch of times. In episode 3, you see it the first time that Erik and Leslie meet. It's in that room. All of episode 4 is in that room. But yeah, it was a set. They built that. It was pretty small. I mean,
it was sort of, you can sort of see the room, and there was a hallway that fed into it, and their jail cells were on the other side of it. And
the monitors were behind where the camera was, and the camera was
they built a rig for it.
Yeah, and it was a machine. It moved on its own. Like it had a grip. Charlie, he was there to make sure that it was going at the right time, or it was in the right place at the right time. And they had the script taped down on the floor so that they could look at, where they were, where they needed to be. Yeah, I remember those first couple of takes, the camera made this loud noise.
It
was sort of like a
sound.
It had like an engine of its own, which was kind of distracting at first.
Well, it's funny because I actually was like, because I never turned around, I have no, I'm like, what was back there? I don't know. But there, besides that noise, where it started and moved to is and they were, somebody was there, but they were mechanically having it move. And then by the time we ended, the camera pushed past and was right here.
Yeah,
for him.
It was literally right there.
Which is amazing. But also,
and at the end too, when it stops, then the sound would die. So it'd be like, "Ugh." And then I would know that that's the end moment. And this is actually something that I should say that I learned a lot about, not only getting lost in the world or the play or the character or what's happening, is like, you also, for the camera, you have to sort of be aware of where your face is or how you look cinematically. And so I'm so happy that we shot it over 2 days, because the first day I went and looked at the stills, which maybe you're not supposed to do. They don't really like when you do that. But I'm happy that I looked at it, because the camera was like here and Leslie's there and my face was looking at her. So the end shot was like almost profile. And I was like, that is not cinematic looking. So then the second day, I made sure that at the end moment that my head was angled toward the camera and my eyes were just looking at her, so that it looked more cinematic.
But this is what's so crazy.
Having the two brains, it's like you've got to have your...
But very few actors really that I know that are as soulfully, deeply talented as you are can also has that brain. That's what was so incredible, is watching the depth of where that work was coming from and how extraordinary it was every time, and so full and alive and heartbreaking in totally different ways every time, without pause. And even if there was a moment where I knew it wasn't where he wanted it to be, there was just an allowance of doing that, and also being aware of the camera, which is like an incredibly hard thing to do. And I'm not always great about that or wanting to know, but that it was incredible to watch you hold both of those things. Congratulations. I love you. Congratulations.
My mother, my best friend, my therapist. Yeah.
So in the 2 days that you filmed this, I believe you did 8 takes, right?
There were
Full through.
eight full through. Yeah. There were a couple of stop and starts. Like I think the first couple of takes they had to stop because the bag was placed wrong or something, and they had to stop and fix it. And then
I don't really remember those times, but that is
Yeah,
allegedly what happened.
Well, it's also so jarring too because you think like, okay, here we go, we're going in, and then they're like, okay, cut, and they're like, we just have to fix this bag.
I can't believe that didn't
We're like-
happen though more. I mean, it's sort of wild and a testament to the whole crew, the camera, us, everybody, that everyone was so dialed into that work that 2 times there were somewhat false starts, but the rest of the 8, it was pretty smooth sailing.
And Cooper, you've said that the first 2 takes didn't feel as good to you, and you may not want to necessarily discuss this, but I'm curious,
I'll talk about it.
What felt off about those 2? Like, what was wrong? What did you feel like I could do this better?
I just didn't. It just wasn't as full as it had been, and I think I was aware of what was happening. I was aware of, Ryan sat there for the first 2 takes, so I was like trying to impress him, which is always gonna like kill the art and the work. So as I'm trying to impress someone or I'm trying to do a good job, you should never try to do a good job. You should always just try to do what the character is doing, or needing or wanting. So yeah, I just didn't get it.
Well, it also, we were talking to each other less,
Yeah.
I would say.
I wasn't, I'm remembering now. I wasn't looking at you as much in those first 2 takes. I was trying to sort of hide from her because I was maybe trying to make the choice of like, I don't want her to see me. I don't want to talk about these things. I don't want to do this. So I'm not going to look at her. And then after the first 2 and then into the 3rd take, when Michael told me to be open to her and to find light and to try to defend the parents, then I tried to look at her the whole time. And then that.
Can you tell me a little bit more about finding the light?
Yeah. My film and TV teacher from Pace is here. He's right there.
Hi.
He Matthew Bonifacio.
Well done.
And he taught me at Pace to find what's called opposite choices. So you see a line or a passage or whatever, and you would think, oh, this is what it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to cry here, or I'm supposed to be upset here. Sometimes when you do the thing that's not what you think it should be, actually sort of informs something that's maybe more truthful or more real. And so I tried to do some of that, which helped. And then you get lost in it in that way, because then you're sort of, I don't know, it's hard to describe. Like,
I think also it's like you were all, not to speak for you, but let me just tell you a couple things. But I just want to say this one thing and then I'll let you finish.
Leslie.
But that how, Cooper really loved and loves Erik, and I really loved and love Leslie. And so also the light of the choice and the truth, I think, of that this son, regardless of what happened, did love his parents very much. And the unbearable truth with abuse often is those are the times when you feel loved, as you say in the beginning, which is something you hear. And so like the honesty and sort of the light of if that was the moment, if that was the only light in that moment and that truth to him, that I felt like was such an honoring of the love that existed underneath this unbelievable, horrible, many times over tragedy.
Yeah, totally. And I think when you think about, if you want to talk about like creating memory or creating those images of the dark stuff, of the bad times, you know, that's one thing that definitely had to be created and visualized and imagined. But I think, to speak on that, the images and the memories that were the most impactful and became the most emotional were the times where he was receiving love from his parents, and that's what he was always seeking. So I think those memories were in some ways more important than the bad ones.
I somehow can't believe that we're at time. I could talk to you guys about this for literal hours, but I do want to quickly, before we wrap up, Cooper, you have since met Erik Menendez, so I would love if you could tell us quickly about that experience before we leave.
Yeah, we spoke on the phone the night before the show came out, thank God. I really wanted to talk to him before it came out, just so he could know where I stood, and that I just wanted him to know that I did everything I could to advocate for him and play him as authentically as possible. We had a really nice conversation, and we talked about spirituality and both going to Calabasas High School and hiking at Stunt Road, which we both did. And so we connected on a lot of things we have in common. And I told him that, and I cried, and he was like, "You're sweet." And then when I met him, it just felt really normal. I mean, he's so kind, and we were going to go sit in this circle with all the other incarcerated individuals, and they were going to share their stories. And he's like, "Come, you're sitting next to me. Come on." And he pulled me over and my partner over, and we sat with him. And yeah, they're both amazing people, and they're both really charming and kind and funny. They're very funny. They cracked a lot of jokes. Erik was like whispering to me jokes while they were going around and sharing their stories. And I was like, "Stop making jokes right now." And yeah, I care for them a lot, and I hope that they get out soon so we can play tennis.
Thank you all for being here. Monsters is streaming on Netflix. Cooper Koch and Ari Graynor.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.